They chose the site because it was empty. Not abandoned, not destroyed, not forgotten, simply empty. No ruins on the surface, no myths tied to the land, no oral traditions, no written records. Maps showed nothing worth noting. Archaeological surveys returned silence. To human history, the ground beneath their boots had never mattered. That absence was exactly what made it perfect. A place with no story meant no expectations, no distractions, no interference. Or so they believed. The first reports described the area as geologically stable, unremarkable except for its age. The rocks were ancient, older than most exposed formations on the planet, shaped long before humans learned to mark time. But age alone does not imply importance. Many places are old. Very few are watched. This one had never been. And that distinction matters. Because the moment humans began to cut into it, the silence ended. Drilling was not supposed to reveal anything dramatic. The project was designed as a scientific exercise, a controlled descent into the Earth's crust, meant to extract data, not stories. No one expected ruins, artifacts, or signs of intelligence. They were not searching for civilization. They were searching for depth. What they encountered instead was resistance. Not sudden, not violent, but persistent, escalating, and deeply unsettling in its consistency. At first, the drill progressed normally. Layers of sediment gave way to harder rock as predicted. The data streams were clean. Temperatures rose, but within acceptable margins. Engineers adjusted parameters, logged numbers, moved on. Everything about the operation suggested routine. And yet, even in those early stages, subtle anomalies appeared. Minor fluctuations in pressure, unusual vibrations traveling back up the drill column, acoustic readings that didn't align cleanly with known rock behavior. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they formed a pattern that no one could yet name. As the drill pushed deeper, the Earth began to behave less like an object and more like a system. Temperatures increased faster than theoretical models allowed. Equipment designed to tolerate extreme conditions failed prematurely. Metal warped. Sensors returned contradictory readings. Entire sections of the drill string vanished into the shaft after structural collapses that defied simple explanation. These were not catastrophic events. They were quiet failures, the kind that erode confidence slowly, forcing teams to adapt without ever fully understanding what they were adapting to. The deeper they went, the older the Earth became. Rock samples pulled from kilometers below the surface told stories measured not in centuries but in billions of years. Pressure had transformed once soft sediments into crystalline structures so dense they barely resembled their original form. Yet inside those samples, scientists began to find traces that should not have survived. Microscopic fossils, fragmented remains of life that existed long before complex organisms walked the surface. Evidence that even at depths once assumed sterile and lifeless, something had persisted. Water was found where no water should exist. Not trapped pockets, not residual moisture, but active systems. Fluids under immense pressure, moving through rock formations believed to be impermeable. Flowing, circulating, carrying heat and minerals through pathways that models said could not exist. This was not a static environment. It was alive with processes no one had ever directly observed. That discovery changed the tone of the project. The drill was no longer descending into a dead shell of stone. It was entering an environment shaped by constant motion, invisible from the surface but relentless in its activity. Each new meter brought conditions further removed from anything human experience could contextualize. Temperatures climbed past thresholds thought to mark the end of meaningful geological interaction. Pressures reached levels that crushed steel like paper. And still the Earth did not become uniform. It became more complex. Chemical analyses revealed unexpected concentrations of rare elements, distributed in ways that challenged existing theories of crust formation. Some samples displayed isotopic signatures that mirrored those found in extraterrestrial material, not because they came from space, but because the processes that shaped them were older than the separation between Earth and the debris that formed the Moon. The implication was subtle but profound. The deeper they went, the closer they came to the planet's earliest memory. And then there were the sounds. Officially, there were no voices, no screams, no recordings of anything supernatural. That part of the story belongs to rumor, born from a satirical article that escaped its original context and metastasized into legend. But there were sounds, real ones. Acoustic data picked up patterns produced by stress fracturing, thermal expansion, and fluid movement under pressure. To engineers, they were signals. To anyone listening without context, they were deeply uncomfortable. Low-frequency groans, rhythmic pulses, vibrations that traveled up kilometers of steel and stone, arriving distorted, stretched, and almost organic in their cadence. The deeper the drill went, the more frequently operations had to pause. Not because of danger to human life, no one was down there, but because the machines could not survive the conditions they were creating contact with. At depths exceeding 12 kilometers, the environment crossed a threshold beyond engineering prediction. Heat alone made further progress nearly impossible. Lubricants failed, sensors burned out. Structural integrity could no longer be guaranteed. The project reached its limit not because the Earth ended, but because human capability did. By the time drilling ceased, the shaft represented the deepest artificial point ever reached by humanity. A narrow wound in the crust, extending downward into regions no one had ever touched before. And what had been learned was both less and more than expected. No caverns, no vast empty spaces, no dramatic void waiting to be filled with speculation. Instead, there was density, pressure, motion, and time layered so deeply that the surface world barely registered by comparison. The idea that the site had been empty now seemed absurd. It had never been empty. It had simply existed beyond the scale of human awareness. What humans call history is shallow, measured in thin layers near the surface. Below that lies a record written in compression, heat, and transformation. A record that does not require observers to exist. When the project ended, the site was sealed. Equipment dismantled, funding redirected. Officially, it was a success. Data was published. Models were updated. Textbooks revised. Unofficially, it left behind a discomfort that never fully dissipated. Not fear of monsters or hidden worlds, but the realization that beneath our feet lies an environment that is active, ancient, and entirely indifferent to us. The ground had not been waiting in the sense humans understand waiting. It had been continuing, moving, changing, persisting, long before we arrived, and long after we stopped listening. The drill did not uncover something new. It intersected with something ongoing. A process that never paused simply because no one was watching. So when we say the place was empty, what we really mean is that it had no witnesses. And when something started moving, it wasn't because it had just begun. It was because, for the first time, we were close enough to notice. And that should unsettle us more than any myth ever could. Because it means the Earth does not hide its secrets. It simply keeps them where our attention rarely goes. Far below the surface, where history is not recorded, only endured.